Hello, today I'm going to be womansplaining feminism. Today I'm talking about trigger warnings. So I see a lot of misunderstandings online, or at least what I perceive as misunderstandings, of what phrases like trigger warning actually mean. In my experience, this has been a measure implemented in very specific corners of the internet for the sake of not upsetting people who've experienced some kind of trauma.
For the sake of not upsetting people, I thought being triggered was some next level rocking back and forth in the corner of your bathroom type shit. And I didn't think there were many people who didn't understand what a trigger warning is. I thought it was more a case of some people, arguably a lot of people, questioning their effectiveness.
For people who've been abused, for example, they can end up developing a condition like PTSD. For a soldier who's returned from war, people are aware of things like fireworks triggering an anxiety attack.
Yeah, I get that one. If you're going to be causing literal explosions to happen, it's probably polite to take steps to ensure anyone in the vicinity of those explosions is aware that those explosions are going to occur. Likewise, if you're somehow presenting graphic depictions of abuse or rape, it's probably polite to mention it ahead of time.
It's similar for rape victims, and mentions of rape or depictions of it in the media can trigger an overwhelming response of anxiety.
And this is where you lose me. If somebody gets triggered by the mere mention of rape, then wouldn't a trigger warning that mentions rape trigger them? I don't understand how one more mention of rape is supposed to help.
The idea of a trigger warning is simply to warn viewers who may be upset by content. It's used no differently to viewer discretion warnings on the television. The only difference is that it's a lot more specific what the trigger will potentially be.
Okay, so hypothetical scenario. I'm triggered by, say, ducks. Toddy's triggered by biscuits. Podgy balding cop is triggered by carpet. Middle ages English guy is triggered by used bingo tickets. Female robot assistant is triggered by braised lamb shanks. Cuntface is triggered by the word retrospectively. And my neighbour Bob is triggered by his non-binary son's otherkin friend Shadow Fox Angel. We all turn up to your theatre company's play that just so happens to include ducks, biscuits, carpet, used bingo tickets, braised lamb shanks, the word retrospectively, and Shadow Fox Angel. Now you've never met any of us, so you wouldn't have a clue what our triggers are. How do you handle this? Is everyone supposed to issue trigger warnings for everything they talk about ever? Oh, and consider yourself lucky that Bearing Tits couldn't make it. That bitch gets triggered by anything.
Triggers refer specifically to feelings associated with trauma, sometimes feelings that are triggered in relation to mental illness. I used to see trigger warning food on posts and wonder why that was there. As it turns out, that is there so people with eating disorders who are triggered by images of food can avoid content that upsets them.
Really? But you'd think at some stage quite recently they'd have actually eaten food. You know, on account of them being, like, alive. And imagine the chaos that'd be caused if everyone was expected to issue food trigger warnings.
This is not to suggest that everyone online absolutely must use a trigger warning or is a bad person.
Thank fuck for that.
But it's a considerate action to take if you know that somebody has a mental illness or has experienced trauma and they're on your friends list on Facebook, for example, and it's just being considerate where possible.
Fair enough.
As someone with a basic understanding of human psychology, I do know that some triggers people have will be incredibly hard to account for, and to the point it would likely be too difficult for others to accommodate for these needs. For example, if I were beaten as a child repeatedly while brushing my teeth, it is possible that toothpaste could trigger an anxiety attack in relation to that abuse.
It's also possible you'd have some pretty bad teeth.
If we can take small measures to reduce the pain experienced by people in these groups, it's a kind and considerate thing to do. That said, unless you're going out of your way to trigger these thoughts about abuse in abuse victims to be malicious, the lack of trigger warnings alone isn't enough to make you a terrible person.
Fair enough. I don't think there's anything wrong with accommodating other people's feelings where practical. What I don't get though is the idea of issuing trigger warnings for food, and how a trigger warning for something like rape can be beneficial where someone is triggered by the mere mention of rape. Anyway, see ya.